So the next phase is, how do we integrate traditional systems and modern wireless industrial IoT? I'm not going to spend time on technical protocols and things like that here. We can get into those in later webinars, and we will be later on in the year. So we'll talk about, for example, wireless HART and how it works based on the more historic HART protocol, and how that can integrate with existing PLC systems and DCS systems. And all of that can happen on a technical basis. What I want to do is take just a couple of moments here as we're reaching the end of this webinar that's really aimed at giving you an understanding of traditional industrial automation so that you can begin to think about how to integrate industrial IoT into it and answer some key questions that have to be considered. And here are those key questions. What devices will be integrated and what devices will be replaced? So the first thing to ask when we're looking at what the new industrial IoT systems offer is, what do they offer to me? What do they offer to our environment? And is there a real benefit to actually utilizing those in our environment? So it goes back to some of those things we talked about earlier. Where do we see an application of IoT as opposed to traditional industrial automation that can provide a true benefit to make it worth the cost? And what devices will be replaced? So there might be new devices we're bringing into the environment that do things we're not doing now. And then there might be devices we're bringing into the environment that are replacing existing solutions because they do it better. And then what is the plan for integration and replacement? Do you actually have a roadmap, a plan that you're going to go through in order to achieve this? And here's probably the biggest question of all. You will find many people talking about this at IoT automation conferences, or industrial automation conferences, I should say. If you go to these events where the big vendors for SCADA and PLCs and DCS and RTUs are meeting and gathering, it's a common question that comes up when IIoT is discussed. And that's, who's in charge? Who will control the industrial IoT as opposed to the SCADA, DCS, PLCs, RTUs, and etc. And this is a big, big concern and issue that we have to address. So traditionally, there's been a separation in industrial environments between IT and OT, information technology and operations technology. One of the big things that industrial IoT gives to us is all of this data and information from our plants, from our oil and gas pipelines and processing, or whatever it is. All of that information can be gathered together for business analysis. And that means getting it out of the industrial environment and into the corporate or enterprise environment. And you have to ask, who's in charge of that connection point? Who's in charge of harvesting that data? Who's in charge of actually managing the security of that data, and so forth? And so there are fears and concerns that always come along with this. I mean, the general concept of automation itself introduces fears and concerns, right? So if you think about automation, let's bring this home to those of us that work in IT. Imagine that there's a robot that can mount an access point, and that robot can not only mount the access point, but then wirelessly can automate the configuration of that access point through a controller and do it all without a human being present. And so it reads a design document that is maybe in something like an IB Wave or Ekahau format or what have you. It reads the design document, looks at blueprints, automatically determines where it needs to go and mounts the AP, and then configures that AP automatically, having connected it to the cabling. Okay, so someone had to get the cabling there. Well, maybe in the first stage. The point is, does that raise a concern for those that mount and configure APs? Sure it does. So imagine the concern of the operations technology professionals and the right and proper concern of, wait a minute, you're bringing in all this industrial IoT stuff I don't know about. I know PLCs, I know DCS, I know SCADA. I'm a master of all of this. I know ladder logic and can do it in my sleep. So none of that's going to be used if the system is entirely replaced with industrial IoT. So do I have a job? That concern often causes resistance, right? And so it's a common historical thing that anytime there's innovation, there's resistance over concern of job losses and things like that. What we've also seen historically is innovation has always resulted in more opportunities and more jobs, but it did often require retraining. So this is an issue that organizations are going to have to tackle. Are we retraining OT people to do the role? Are they going to continue in the role with SCADA systems and other such systems? And new people will work with the industrial IoT solutions? This is a question that has to be answered, and their fears need to be understood and addressed by management. That's not necessarily the job of the person doing the industrial IoT implementation, but it's important to understand that there can be some resistance and there can be some issues there that have to be addressed. And it needs to be clear who's controlling what, where are the edges of control, and what is the responsibility of the different groups and individuals. And I personally think that a synergistic relationship between IT and OT is the way to go. Because of the things that we've talked about here, those people working in OT, particularly those that have worked for more than a decade in OT, they know that environment so well, and I need them badly when I'm implementing industrial IoT solutions. I might understand LoRa and LoRaWAN. I might understand Sigfox or Zigbee or Z-Wave or wireless HART or ISA 100.11a or Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, right? So I might understand all those things and I know them and I'm a master of them, but I may not be a master of PLCs and RTUs and what data comes out of them and how do I condition that data so that my IoT devices can read and understand it and send it back to my IoT solution, which may be in the cloud, and then process that for business analysis. So I, as an IoT integration professional, need to be able to partner with someone that understands that and work with them. And a synergistic relationship between IT and OT is going to be, in my opinion, essential as we move forward over the next decade and see more and more IoT solutions coming into the industrial space. Okay, with that, I'd like to thank you for attending the webinar today.